If MJ was born in 1999, or not 1999, like 1990, and he grew up around the same time that LeBron grew up, or whenever the fuck LeBron was born. I don't want to bother doing that math. If that situation had happened, he would have grown up to a league that cared more about spacing, specifically from guards, and he would have worked on his three-point shot. As I was working on the Goatmentary, I really started considering the history of the game. From day 1 to day 26,275, or however many days it's been at this point, because I wrote this script a long time ago. I also got a lot of comments like that on the Goatmentary, basically regurgitating the same statement. If you haven't watched the Goatmentary yet and you're a fan of this channel, what the hell's wrong with you? But with reflecting on the history of the game, I wondered who the first superstar in the NBA was. Well, actually, I already knew that it was George Mikan, but I wanted to know more about the guy. So this video is going to be kind of a blend of a normal video and a mini documentary. At the end of this video, we're going to go over the impact that Mikan had on the game, but to start, we're going to do a mini doc. So I'm going to roll the intro, and we will get on with that.
Rebound. Save. Absolutely incredibly with the acrobatic alley-oop.
George Mikan was born into a Croatian family in Joliet, Illinois. He would grow to be 6'10", but he didn't seem to be destined to be an athlete. He weighed 245 pounds, had a very awkward gait, and he had worn thick glasses. It also didn't help that basketball wasn't a very popular sport, nor did it have a professional league until right after he finished college. And even for basketball, being tall and lumbering was actually seen as a negative. Big men were seen as too awkward to ever play the game properly. But after enrolling at DePaul University, Mikan met the head coach of DePaul's basketball team, who was named Ray Myers. Ray saw potential in Mikan as a player, not just because of his height, but because of his smarts. He thought that if Mikan could combine his IQ with his size, he could be a hell of a player. Myers, seeing the potential in Mikan because of his height, was revolutionary at the time because of the stigma around tall players. Before the basketball season began, Coach Myers shaped Mikan into a better athlete and gave him confidence in his towering height, that he was initially ashamed of. And this would work out for DePaul, as Mikan would dominate his opponents who were intimidated by his size and strength, and he had developed a deadly hook shot with both of his hands, being one of the first notable players to use his offhand consistently. He also earned a reputation as a tough player, consistently playing through injuries and throwing his defenders around in the paint. He was also an unbelievable shot blocker, however this was due to goaltending not being a rule yet, mainly because it was thought that there couldn't possibly be a player capable of blocking a shot that high. In college, Mikan was named the Helms NCAA College Player of the Year twice, in 1944 and 45, and he was an All-American 3 times. After Mikan finished his senior season, he signed with Chicago American Gears, who were a National Basketball League (NBL) team. After averaging 16 points per game as a rookie and leading the Gears to a championship, the Gears would dismantle, and Mikan would head to the Minneapolis Lakers. In Minneapolis, he would rise to stardom, where he would average 21.3 points and what could be assumed to be mid-teens in rebounds, because rebounds were not recorded back then. The Lakers would beat the Rochester Royals 3-1 as the final series were best of 5 in the NBL, and next season the Lakers and 3 other NBL franchises joined the Basketball Association of America. This year Mikan would go from star to superstar, averaging 28.3 points, which, to put that into perspective, in 1948 only 2 other players averaged 20 plus points. Second behind Mikan was Joe Fulks, who averaged 26 points per game, but he averaged that shooting 10% worse than Mikan, so George was the clear-cut best player in the world. On a side note, guys in the 40s just shot awfully. The league leader in field goal percentage in 1948 was Arnie Rison, who shot 42.3% from the field. Mikan was second in the league, shooting 41.5%. The Lakers would beat the Washington Capitals in 6 games, with Mikan averaging 27.5 points. Next season, the BAA and NBL merged to create the NBA. Mikan averaged 27.4 points and led the Lakers once again to the championship, this time beating the Syracuse Nationals in 6 games with Mikan averaging 32 points. Mikan would lead the league in scoring for the 3rd time in a row in the 1950-51 season, averaging 28.4 points, and after the league started counting rebounds, seriously, that's how long ago this was, he averaged 14.1 rebounds and he shot 43%, the best statistical season of his career. Also, fun fact, Mikan played in the game that notoriously led to the invention of the shot clock. The Fort Wayne Pistons, in a game against the Lakers, after going up 19-18, just held the ball and passed it around for the rest of the game to get the win. That would be the lowest scoring game in NBA history. Later in the postseason, the Lakers would lose to the Royals in the division finals because Mikan had a fracture in his leg which slowed him down. He still managed to average 24 points per game, but it was on worse shooting. Next year, the NBA added a rule dubbed the Mikan rule, which changed the size of the paint, making it harder for Mikan to get into deep post position. This hurt his point production and efficiency, making him average just 24 points on 4% worse shooting from the field than he did last year. Even though this season was the worst of his career in the NBA, he did have his most impressive performance ever, dropping 61 and 36 on the Rochester Royals. The Lakers would face the Knicks in the finals, but to show just how truly new the NBA was and how little popularity it had, in the 52 finals neither team played on their home court until Game 7. Madison Square Garden had a circus going on, and the Minneapolis Auditorium was booked as well. But in this series, the Lakers would beat the Knicks 4-3. Doesn't matter if it's the 1950s, the Knicks still take L's. Next year, Mikan's scoring dipped once again, but that didn't prevent them from beating the Knicks again. And next year, the Minneapolis Lakers won the title once again, making it a three-peat and the 5th title in 6 years. This made the Minneapolis Lakers the first dynasty in NBA history, and Mikan decided that he wanted to go out on top, retiring at age 29, a 5-time champion, and at the time, the NBA's greatest scorer with a career total of nearly 10,000 points and the greatest basketball player ever, again at the time. But he decided to do some MJ shit and come out of retirement. Well, actually, unfortunately, it was more like Rasheed Wallace coming out of retirement. After the Lakers failed to win without Mikan, he decided to return to help them, but his time away from the game affected him, leading to him only averaging 10 and 8, but the one positive of this was that it did put him over 10,000 career points. He officially retired, for real this time, as the NBA's first superstar, and again at the time, the greatest NBA player ever. Not that there was a whole lot of competition. So that was the mini documentary section of the video. Now I want to talk about the impact that Mikan had on basketball and specifically the NBA. To put this as simple as possible, Mikan is the reason that big men became so prevalent in basketball. Previous to Mikan's rise, short, fast players who could move up and down the court quickly were seen as the best players to have. Bigs were typically really slow-footed, and because of that, with the high pace of basketball, it was thought that they could lag behind. And that logic does make sense. When you look at all of the other major sports, height really isn't a huge advantage for the most part, and it often is a hindrance. So when basketball was in the early stages of development, it's possible that the people around the game looked at the other major sports and assumed that the same rules applied. But after the rise of Mikan, it was quickly discovered how dominant having a giant on the court could be. His height allowed him to score over smaller defenders, rebound at an insane rate, and block shots. What's ironic about all of this is that the way the game was going before Mikan came around was kind of similar to the modern NBA. The NBA in the last few years has gone away from the prototypical big man in favor of faster, smaller players who, rather than get in the post like Mikan would more so shoot the ball, handle the ball, and keep up with the league's quickest guards. So there is actually a chance that the introduction of Mikan kind of slowed down the evolution of the game. But even if that was the case, there is no denying that Mikan had a huge impact impact on basketball. And with how early basketball was in its development, you can't really say that Mikan held it back. Mikan paved the way for some of the league's greatest big men. Wilt Chamberlain, Bill Russell, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Hakeem, and Shaq. Mikan is the reason that height became such a huge part of basketball from the 1950s to 60 plus years later. And in terms of his impact on the NBA specifically, Mikan gave the NBA someone to market. He gave the league a face, and that was incredibly valuable. The earlier professional basketball leagues didn't have a superstar on Mikan's level. They didn't have someone to market. As a result, the leagues either failed or merged into the NBA. The NBA getting George Mikan in the early days led them to a path to becoming a multi-billion-dollar industry. So Mikan was the NBA's first superstar. He won 5 championships in his career, probably would have won a couple of MVPs if that award existed before he retired. He was also a pioneer of the game, making big men really important to basketball, and he was able to put a face to the league, which helped get the NBA to where it is today. That's the end of this video. Please be sure to like and subscribe for more NBA content like this, and cue the outro music.